Hi there. We've all heard the usual trope. Taxation is theft. Why should the state come in and take my hard-earned money to do such and such? There is an argument there, sure. But what if I told you you're already being robbed on the daily by something bigger, much, much bigger than just taxation? Let's start by clarifying the argument a little. In the grand scheme of things, taxes are used in capitalist states as a sort of social fund derived from the population to supposedly serve their needs by maintaining roads, schools, hospitals, paying the wages of public employees, etc. In practice, this can vary from providing a decent social safety net, like in the Scandinavian countries, off the backs of imperialized countries usually, to enriching the already richest group of people in the country and funding never-ending military campaigns and wars, like in the US. Generally, though, it can be considered that taxes serve a somewhat useful social function. Remember the other form of theft, that much greater one that I just mentioned? The one that you're subject to every single day, which we barely even perceive. Let's discuss that then. What I'm specifically talking about is something called the extraction of surplus value. Now, what does that mean exactly? Under capitalism, profit has to come from somewhere. You're hired to work at a firm or office or enterprise because you make the boss money, simple as, otherwise they'd have no incentive to hire you. Now, there are various streams and methods, but the kernel of capitalist profit is the extraction of surplus value. You go to work for, say, 8 hours a day. Out of those 8 hours, you produce, let's say, $80 of output. Your wage at the end of the day, though, is only $40. What's going on here? Why are you getting only half of what you produced? You're the one who did all the work, so where did the other $40 go? Simple. To the capitalist. For 8 hours of work, you only got paid for 4. The other 4 hours you worked, you'll never see the fruit of. Now, people can try to play this any way they want. It's the capitalist's right because they risked. A nonsensical argument, as modern capitalist governments guarantee large businesses, and those capitalists that started them by vast majority came from already very wealthy and highly connected families. Even if we take the risk argument at face value, well, it goes both ways. The workers risk, and risk far more for working at that particular enterprise than the capitalist ever does. I can assure you, you risk more driving to work than they have starting and maintaining that business. With that silly argument dealt with, this isn't the full story. Out of those $40 you're paid, the capitalist state steps in and takes their cut. Let's say the tax rate is 25%. That means your $40 become $30. You worked 8 hours and only got back 3 hours worth. But the amount lost to tax, $10, is far less than the amount lost to the capitalist, $40. So why are people more upset about the taxation rate? Simple. Because people actually see the taxation rate. On your wage statements, be they bank statements or otherwise, a tax deduction from your wage is directly seen. You directly experience and visualize your hard-earned money leaving you and going to a social fund that you can only hope will actually benefit you eventually, which many times in practice ends up helping those same capitalists that stole your surplus too. With surplus extraction, however, you don't ever directly visualize that, and money relations being our social expression of worth, rather than, say, labor outputs, obfuscate this theft even more. Imagine if everything was honest and transparent and out in the open. At the end of a day's work, you see your wage statement, which goes as follows. Full worth, $80. Surplus extracted for the capitalist, $40. Tax deduction to the capitalist state, $10. Total sum left, $30. All of a sudden, people would start demanding their full right, or at least a bigger chunk of it, no? To say all that in plain English, tax is considered to be theft because you see your full salary come in and then a portion deducted. Surplus extraction is the true and grander theft, but you don't see any portion deducted, and hence are never conscious of what is truly going on. Imagine if you did see what really happened. 100% is how much you make in value, 50% is the surplus extracted, and from whatever's left of your salary, another 25% is taken as tax. This is all an obvious oversimplification to drive a point home. People are usually paid monthly, not at the end of a day. Surplus extraction occurs at differing rates at differing enterprises and fields. And right now, we're not discussing finance capital and other forms for simplicity's sake. The point still stands though. Overall, you produce more output than you ever get back. And that output goes to a capitalist that uses it to replenish capital stock, to invest in the circuit of capital, and to develop their business further. Or he spends it on fancy booze and yachts, it really depends. The capitalist gets taxed too, I hear someone yell. Well, yeah, true. But the taxation rates are way lower than yours or mine, and a lot of the time they get away with paying no taxes scot-free. They have power within the capitalist state to manage their affairs as they wish. That's why Amazon not only paid no taxes recently, but actually received tax money. Yes, your hard-earned income going to subsidize the life of the wealthiest man on earth and his business. How lovely. Imagine if we had a different system. Imagine if instead of a class of net exploiters that exist parasitically off of the labor of working people, we had a society oriented towards the development of everyone equally. We can say, hypothetically, that this system had a different setup of the enterprise, office, or workplace, wherever you work. Instead of, like under capitalism, where you have no say in your work and have half or more of your surplus stolen, you have a democratic enterprise, one in which you and all your fellow co-workers democratically decide how and what to produce, or whatever other form of economic output your workplace generates. Where you democratically decide on the division of your labor, not of a minority of output going to you in a disappointing wage and the majority going to a capitalist, but instead where you divide your work as output that goes to you for your needs and personal development, and output that goes to a direct social fund that doesn't end up as just another avenue for the mega ultra rich to derive more wealth from. In plain words, work for oneself and work for society. Instead of working 4 hours for yourself and 4 hours for a capitalist, everyone work 4 hours for themselves and 4 hours for social development, generally. Logically, since a certain set amount of output is designated for social development in a common fund, there would then also be no need for taxes, right? Exactly right. All this sounds so familiar. Oh wait, that's because this was something that happened. This is the actual practice of socialism. Countries like Cuba, the USSR, the GDR, etc. had this, or a similar setup to differing degrees, where social output was controlled by the working people so that the surplus they produced didn't go to enrich a small minority of unaccountable capitalists, but instead went to the direct maintenance of society. That's why, in socialist countries like those just named, there was high-quality free education and healthcare at all levels, despite said countries being far poorer than the ever-grand US of A, which can't even house its whole population, let alone develop healthcare and education for them. Full employment, no homelessness, education and healthcare for all, the cultural and social development of all members of society, not off the backs of third world colonies and the exploitation of the poorest on earth, but through their own effort. These aren't utopian ideas because all this has already been done before in many countries. Those who hand-wave, claiming this is starry-eyed utopianism, only do so in a transparent attempt to distract you from these truths. Not only is this possible, it's already been done. Socialism directly serves your interests, and all the rest that you've heard against it is only a performance hoping to make you complacent with the far greater theft that occurs to you every minute of every day you work under capitalism. One thing left unmentioned is that, under capitalism, the $30 you're left with are supposed to go and cover your healthcare needs, your educational fees, your groceries, rent, insurance, 100 other expenses. Under socialism, there is no rent as housing is free. Necessary consumer goods, food, hygiene products, baby products, etc. are heavily subsidized. You don't need insurance as maintenance is covered by the state, and you have no educational healthcare fees as those are covered too. In the end, this means that the vast majority of the population is materially better off under socialism than under capitalism, and this has been proven not only by the research done into the matter, but also by contemporary research like that in the UK done by Cockshot. Hold on though, aren't socialist countries funded by extremely high taxes? No, not at all, actually. This is a bad caricature of what socialists actually want and have done, and is repeated endlessly by right-wing pundits who either know better and are lying, or simply don't know better out of ignorance. You pick which. Sweden, Norway, etc. aren't socialist countries. They are the ones that fund their state programs through taxation, unequal exchange, and they're taking part in imperialism with the global south. I've made a video on this here. Historically, actual socialist countries only had a small ceremonial tax on select things, like property, for example, in the USSR. Other socialist countries had zero tax completely, like Albania at different points. Some countries had limited income taxes set, again to ceremonial amounts, percentages as low as 3, 4, or 5%, or value-added tax to purchased goods. Generally though, and on the whole, socialist countries had far, far lower taxation at practically all levels than even relatively light taxing capitalist countries. Enough talk about historical socialism though, what about now? What modern developments has science brought us? Well, quite a lot, actually. With the advent of instant communication, the internet, and widespread use of smartphones, now frequent social referendums on the spending of the social surplus produced in those other 4 hours can be democratically voted on a society-wide basis. You directly could vote on how much percentage should be used for what end, and fancy math determines mean levels according to the democratic consensus. Paul Cockshot has developed concepts of this in his talks presented in Hanoi, which can be seen on YouTube. You wonder why this isn't already a thing with taxes rather than social surplus, which doesn't exist in developed capitalist countries. The answer is painfully obvious. If citizens were allowed to decide where their taxes go, all of a sudden the rich start seeing their bank accounts looking dry, and the military budget contracts by orders of magnitude, and massive corporations see their subsidies taken away. No wonder it isn't a thing. You stand to gain everything, and the ruling class stands to lose a lot. If you're interested in learning more, take a look at my previous 2 videos on why exactly capitalism is an untenable system, as well as why socialism is superior. I include book recommendations and all that. That's it for this time. This is the last video related to the 2 previous ones on capitalism and socialism, meant for those new to my channel to slowly familiarize themselves with the basics of socialism. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Adam T, Jonas Plup, Jack, Nat Tacito, Josh Bitts, Cheris Day, Amonte A, Bruh, Amrita Chakladar, Joma, LT, Santiago Barayas, Xur Dav, Terence Kutaka, Friolero, Sri Venkatesan, Valdir Chifeka, MLM in Practice, Twa Min Yugan, James Fair, Abramski, Zolo, Junior Rocket, Jess, Dana Brewer, Puskara, Brutal Pearl, Shah McMahon, Florian Vrindari, Casey Jones Central, Sarab Chapagain, Stoy Tafardi, Drew Dowling, and Grok. Thank you for watching.